Why semiconductor decline keeps breaking under pressure is not just a bad cycle. It is what happens when a system quietly loses its edge. By the end, you will see what broke inside, why semiconductor decline keeps breaking under pressure, who lost control of it, and why the cost is still showing up now. It looks like one bad decision or one bad year. But the deeper story is a structure that had been weakening for a long time. We are told they got lazy, or that the U.S. simply crushed them with trade deals. The reality is far more uncomfortable and much more dangerous for our current economy. Japan's chip empire didn't just fall. It was structurally squeezed until it snapped. And the pressure that broke Japan is starting to fracture the global system again. By the end of this, you'll see why the quiet comeback of Japan is the only thing keeping your tech affordable. To understand the break, we have to look at the quality trap. In the 80s, Japanese chips were over-engineered to last 25 years. They were built for giant mainframes that never turned off. But the world was moving toward the personal computer. People didn't need a chip to last decades. They needed it to be cheap and fast. Japan was stuck making high-end jewelry when the world wanted plastic watches. This loss of margin for error is the first sign of a system under pressure. Then came the political hammer. The 1986 Semiconductor Agreement. The U.S. forced Japan to stop dumping cheap chips and open their market. It was a forced decapitation of a dominant industry, while Japan was tied down by trade laws. New rivals were given room to breathe. This is why semiconductor decline keeps breaking under pressure, stops looking cyclical and starts looking structurally broken. Samsung and TSMC didn't just compete. They filled the vacuum Japan was forced to leave. But here is where the lazy explanation fails. Japan didn't actually disappear. They just became invisible. Think of a chip like a cake. Korea and Taiwan bake the cake. But Japan owns the oven, the flour, and the secret ingredients. They pivoted from making the final product to controlling the choke points. Japan now controls over 50% of the world's semiconductor materials. Without Japanese photoresist, not a single iPhone could be made. This was the quiet comeback, a strategic retreat to the foundation. But this new structure is breaking under a different kind of pressure. The pressure of geopolitics, specifically the U.S.-China rivalry. Washington realized that if Taiwan is threatened, the world's brain stops. But the real story is not the headline shock. It is the moment the system lost its ability to recover cleanly. Billions of dollars are now pouring back into Japanese soil. TSMC is building massive plants in Kumamoto. Rapidus is aiming for 2-nanometer chips. But can you rebuild an empire that was dismantled 30 years ago? The human stakes are the most invisible part of this story. Japan has a massive shortage of semiconductor engineers. The experts who built the 80s boom are retiring. The youth moved to software. You can build the walls, but you can't easily summon the talent. This is the structural pressure of our time. Everyone wants sovereignty. Every nation wants to own its own supply chain, regardless of the cost. But the semiconductor industry was built on global cooperation, not isolation. When you force a global system into national boxes, it starts to break. The costs go up. The innovation slows down. The margin for error vanishes. So why does this decline keep breaking under pressure? Because we are asking Japan to be something it no longer is. And this is why semiconductor decline keeps breaking under pressure stops looking like a market story and starts looking like a question of lost capacity and power. Japan is no longer the king. It is the indispensable gatekeeper. If Japan fails, the world doesn't just lose a supplier. It loses the recipe. The real question isn't whether Japan will come back to the top. The question is, can the rest of the world survive without their quiet control? The tension we feel today, the chip shortages, the car price hikes, is just the beginning. We are living through the cost of a broken system trying to fix itself. Japan's decline was a warning that no empire lasts forever. But their comeback is proof that power never really leaves. It just changes state. The pressure isn't coming from outside anymore. It's coming from the structure itself. As Japan restarts its factories, the stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just about chips. It's about who controls the future of human intelligence. If Japan's new gamble fails, we won't just see a market crash. We will see the end of the era of cheap, accessible technology. The next time you pick up your phone, remember the silent chemicals inside. And remember the country that decided it was better to be necessary than to be famous. The pressure is building. The structural cracks are showing. But Japan is still there holding the line. The real mystery isn't why they fell, but what they will do when the system finally breaks. Because the only thing more dangerous than a dying giant is one that has learned how to live in the shadows. What matters now is whether why semiconductor decline keeps breaking under pressure can rebuild that lost capacity, or keeps falling further behind. And in that world, the gatekeeper is the only one who wins. The bigger question now is whether why semiconductor decline keeps breaking under pressure was a warning sign, or the start of a much larger decline.